And last speaker of this morning is Volker Grimm. And Volker is going to talk about the Open Modeling Foundation, um, which is co-organizer of this meeting, and in more specific, operationalizing FAIR principles. So with that.
Sounds good. So this is a kind of an invitation to be involved with the Open Modeling Foundation. I hope I can convince you. The talk will be a lot about standards. I've been involved in developing standards for agent-based modeling for more than 20 years. I found it always slightly embarrassing. Standards, is this due to my German ancestors, our German obsession with regulating everything and marching in synchrony? But no, it has to do with challenges. Modeling is facing many, many challenges. Here's one of them. There are more and more modeling intercomparison projects, right? Where you compare models which address the same system, the same question, and you get sometimes results like this. This is the Antarctic and the Southern Ocean around it. And this colleague, Dominic Walburg, he re-implemented 8 different models. Some of these models, they all describe the growth of the Antarctic krill individual, just one individual, depending on temperature, salinity, food resources, and whatnot. And some of these models are really developed for decades by very, very competent teams. Then he ran the model for the same environmental scenario. And red means that the krill will shrink, and blue means that it will grow, and you can see the results are all over the place. I find this really devastating. Really very experienced modelers making the best they could do. Half of the models were statistical, half are mechanistic. So this is something is going wrong here. We need to improve the consistency among models. And so would FAIR help us in this process? You know that FAIR was developed not for models, but for scientific data. And you know the acronym findable, accessible, and so on. It has been extended to research software. You certainly know that. But for scientific modeling, it has its own challenges. I think so far FAIR for data and for research software is more about on the machine side. But once you talk about modeling, you really have also to deal with people, people talking to each other, modelers talking to each other, modelers talking to domain experts, modelers talking to stakeholders, decision makers. So the human dimension becomes much, much more important when we talk about modeling. So one of us, Caroline Rosello, did a review, one of the first products of OMF that will be submitted soon. And she looked at 50 existing modeling standards in the widest sense and tried to identify the underlying motivations and principles. And interoperability on the data side is really about machines talking to each other. But when we talk about models, it has much more dimensions. There is, of course, a technical component. BMI in this community here is a very important standard. But we have also different concepts, we have different worldviews, we have different beliefs, different norms. And if you see this red sentence here, models are social constructs, you might be shocked, but has been documented for hydrological models. Yeah, we think we are scientists, we're all based on data, on reason, on evidence, but we are so much influenced by social forces and factors that we cannot ignore this anymore. And of course, we need to communicate with model users a lot. So Michael Barton had the mission to say, well, we have standards within certain communities to some degree, like this community here, but we ultimately need standards which links all modeling communities, all modeling domains. When I first heard about it about 4 years ago, I think Michael is crazy. Even within a discipline, it didn't work very well so far. But I think it is really important that we do this. So this is the official mission of OMF, standards taken as a generic term for the whole range of guidelines and best practices that in line with the FAIR principles we could and should develop. You see this QR code here. There's also a flyer on the table in the back of the room where you can inform yourself more about OMF. So OMF, that was a design idea very early, and I like it a lot. The members of OMF are not people. The members are organizations. Societies like CSDMS is a member, journals are members, institutions are members, university departments are members, and each member is represented by one person. So in principle, OMF stands for tens of thousands of modelers, yeah, so on paper. But we need to put this into practice a lot. The real work in OMF is done in working groups. We so far have 5 groups. We have the standards group, where I am very much involved. We have the certification group, education and outreach group, early career scholars, cyber infrastructure. I mentioned Alan because he is around here, was around here, if you want to talk to him. So everybody can join this group. There's a website where you can register. It's without any binding obligations. You just express your interest. You will get the emails, and then you will be invited to the Zoom meetings. And so far, we have several hundred people who are involved. So when I speak about standard, it is important to distinguish that standard has 3 main connotations. One is, this is just what people are expected to do within a certain community. Like an ecological modeling, which is my field. In the 90s, you were expected to have sensitivity analysis one at a time, a local analysis. If you did not have it, reviewers would ask for it. Now, increasingly, people say, well, that's nice, a local analysis, but it's very limited. You should really do a global analysis. So slowly, the standards within a community are evolving. So this is one element. The second element, standards are used as a metric for quality, like in language tests. You can have a minimum standard, you can have a maximum standard, some level in between. This is sometimes very useful because the level you reach affects also the effort you have to put into it, right? So this is very important because we all are afraid that standards will add additional burden to our workload. Then, of course, you can have standards which are imposed by some authority, or, for example, a journal. A journal might say you need to specify a data repository where everybody can download your data. And all these different components or connotations of standards are relevant for the work of OMF. When you speak about standards, all of them matter. So where are we now after 2 years of working voluntary work? We have some funding, the Sloan Foundation, but most of the work is voluntary in these working groups. The first result, really, I mentioned already, interoperability is a key FAIR principle we need to focus on. Findable accessibility, reusability are issues as well, but interoperability really stands out. We decided to propose a general language spoken by people, not by machines, so that modelers from different disciplines and different domains can talk to each other. A lingua franca, I will present this in detail in the following slides. And also we want to propose a tiered approach. I just mentioned this. Metric standard is a metric, a minimum, a maximum, and in-between standard, bronze, silver, gold. So these are, so to say, the pathways we decided on, which we will follow on in the future time. Just we had an OMF member council meeting on Monday here in the center, and we decided that we should also, considering the challenges that modeling and science has, especially in this country recently, that we should also help people to communicate what is a model, how should you use a model, what questions should you ask about model. But this is something we will just start doing right now. Provides this, so to say, as a service to the community that we provide training and teaching material. So lingua franca, when you look at Wikipedia, this is a language that enables people from different language communities to communicate specific fields. I try to talk to economic modelers, hydrologists, social science modelers. It's really very, very challenging because they all have the different ideas what a model is. They use different words. So we have established a lingua franca and agent-based modeling. It goes back to 2006. It was really born out of the frustration that model descriptions were usually incomplete. You didn't know where to look for what kind of information. So something needed to be done about it. And so ODD or ODD protocol, you can say it either way. The first O stands for an overview. The first D for design concepts, and then the submodels. And now the idea is to extend this, especially the O part, for all types of models, even for statistical models, which scares me a lot, but we will see. So the basic ideas behind ODD are, when we have a paper, a report, we read it or review it, we first want to get an overview. So what is the purpose of the model? What's in the model? What are the entities? What are the variables? To just have the structure and the processes before we are asked to go into any detail. So we have a kind of a hierarchical reading, which is very, very useful. Then we have design concepts, which makes this a kind of a checklist that you really make important design decisions consciously. It's not about good and bad, it's about just think about it, make sure we have considered this. Then we have all the details you need to re-implement the model. So what actually is the model? What are the processes? What is the initial state of your model world? What kind of input data driving the model are you using? This is more the technical part. And so why would we need a lingua franca? So we need really to talk to each other. And that provides a quick overview about the purposes, the patterns, the variables, the scales and processes and parameters. So I must have read and reviewed literally hundreds of ODDs. And the typical pattern of use is when people use it for the first time, first of all, they hate it. And second, they do it maybe 60, 70% right, but there's a common misunderstandings. The second time, after review comments, usually they are at 90%. And the third time, it's just the way how we do it. I've seen this quite often. So when some of you comes to me and would like to talk about your model, you would start, but I wouldn't understand it. But I said, wait a minute. What's your question? What's your purpose? Ah, that's very interesting. So what's in your model? What entities do you have? Oh, you have grid cells. Okay, you have some variables describing sediment. Oh, that's interesting. So what's the spatial scale resolution? Oh, hey, what's the spin? So really kind of a checklist. And then finally, what processes do you have in your model? Just the names without going into detail. And this is exactly what we want to achieve, that we can talk to each other across boundaries, that we can also even talk to non-modelers. Say, this is a model, very simple. It has just 3 variables for that and that reason. This is a model about the same system, but about a slightly different question, so we need more variables, right? So that's the basic idea. So, of course, then the overview part ideally includes links to the more details and the details part. Again, it facilitates model integration, collaboration with empirical people, collaboration with stakeholders, domain experts, communication with decision makers, and last but not least, model intercomparison. There are already something like 10 reviews which are based on this ODD format. So it really makes models comparable at the structural level. So why start from ODD? Because proof of concept, it has been adopted, it has been used in about 4,000 times within the, really across different disciplines in agent-based modeling. It's not confined to ecology at all. The distinction between an overview part, then the design concepts part and the details part is very generic. There's nothing specific here to agent-based modeling. It's just a kind of a common sense structure, if you ask me. It's not a big invention, it's just how people should do it. And it was successful in terms of a standard because you have to write the model description anyway. So you could come up with your own structure or just use the ODD structure. So people used it immediately. With other standards related to good modeling practice, it might be different. Yeah, if we, for example, require certain standards for how you prepare your data underlying the model, this might require additional effort. So this is so to say that people get used to the idea of a standard, that they are less scared by it, and so on. There's even a graphical representation now of ODD, if you want to have a look at it. So the tiered approach, which is the second pathway we want to follow, is that we want to propose a terminology that includes all steps of modeling, like the conceptual model, the technical description using ODD, then the implementation in the program, then all kinds of tests you did in the model, how you applied the model. People use different terms for these different steps of model development and use also modeling life cycle. So we would like to introduce a common terminology and then provide a template for documenting these steps. So it's not the idea, hey, you should do this. And people would like, well, why would I do that? Why would I follow you? We say, you are all perfect modelers. You're all trying to do a good job. So why don't you just document what you do anyway, but document it following the standard? So this is sort of, again, trying to lower the bar, to lower the threshold, And the direct benefit, if you do that, it adds a lot of transparency why you developed your model in a certain way. And we have examples that people really got papers accepted because reviewers had the chance to look under the hood and then see the details. That requires some more effort, but it has direct benefits. And then we are not there yet, this is something we still have to do, make the effort required following good modeling practice for each of these steps proportional to the expected impact of the model. Yeah, if I just play with some ideas, this is one thing, so the impact is probably not very much. I use it and the model is forgotten. If I develop a model which is supposed to be used by a whole community for the next 20 years and to support decisions, it's a completely different story. So the standards would be much more hard to achieve and require more effort. So this is the second idea beyond the lingua franca. So one example are the trace documents. They were developed in ecological modeling. So we have a certain terminology, what's the problem, what's the model, what kind of data have you used, and so on and so on. And you all do this, yeah? And 90% of what you're doing here remains undocumented in the final paper. It would be really cool to have this documented. Then, for example, the data evaluation, it has a short explanation, what is this about, why it is important, and you can have a summary. And there are something like 50 or 80 trace documents right now. Some of them are 20 pages long, some of them are 100 pages long. They are not meant to be read from cover to cover. They are meant really as a kind of a lookup resource if people want to really dive into more detail. And even if you forget this entire talk here, please download this paper. If you keep a modeling notebook while you do your work, and most of you will do it in some way or the other, if you keep your modeling notebook, so you make notes every single day, and just use trace terminology. It's not prescribing anything at this part. Then you will already be prepared at the end to compile a trace document. Of course, documenting something does not mean that the stuff that you document is good enough. So this quality standards will be the next level, and there will be a lot of follow-up work which we have to do within OMF and also with many, many other people around. So standards really, it still sounds a little bit like, Life of Brian, shouting to the crowd on the balcony, "You're all individuals, right?" And the crowd, yes, we are all individuals. You're all different. Yes, we're all different. And then somebody, probably it's me, says, "I'm not." So I hope I motivated you a little bit. I know that this community is much more involved with standards than most other modeling communities. That's also the reason why we organize this together. But anyway, we need FAIR principles for modeling. They are different from other FAIR principles. Interoperability is key because it includes the human dimension. A common spoken language is needed. We also need technical languages like the descriptions, metadata, and so on. But without a common spoken language, we will not proceed very much. So it's really needed. Good modeling practice should introduce bronze, silver, and gold standards for each step. OMF is a community effort, so join one or more groups and become a co-author. For the young folks, this is the motivation. So it's not just for fun work. At the end, we are producing papers, so there's also a reward. Thank you very much. Are there any questions? So if you have questions, this is day 2. We lost one microphone. Still have one left. So speak up a little bit. Sure. Sure.
Very loud voice. So one of my key questions whenever I hear about standards organizations, what's the governance model? So how are the standards maintained? How are they updated? How are they revised? Besides that, how do you become involved with that decision-making body? So what is the governance model for OMF?
Very good question. And I have to say that Michael drove us crazy because for almost 2 years. He was very carefully preparing the bylaws at first. So this is all written in our bylaws. So within the working groups, we develop standards. Then within the executive committee of OMF, we are deciding, providing feedback, maybe have a white paper where people can comment on it. But at some point, it is voted on by the membership council. So we have 46 persons representing the organizations, and simple majority, if I remember correctly, would then be sufficient. But we have to learn all this on the steps. So we haven't released any standard yet. So it's a very important question. Also, the maintenance leads to the question of resources. Yeah. If somebody has an uncle who is a billionaire, please contact me. Okay, but it's a very important question. Thank you.
Other questions?
Yes, one. Yes, absolutely. We have some journals being members of OMF. Yeah. So, but as I said, we haven't really developed a standard yet. But journals are really key. I have been asked now to be involved in reporting guidelines for medical studies. So there are different kinds of medical studies. And they have even an own society, which is called Equator, with an E at the end. And they have developed hundreds of guidelines for reporting. And they have really a protocol. And they have a buy-in of the journals. So the journals are really critical. This is the third type of standards which I mentioned. If it's just required by the journal. Nowadays, it requires certain structures, introduction, methods, things like that. And someday, it might just be normal to say, well, if you have a model, you should provide this and this information. Yeah, so it's a very important point. Thank you.
So we have a backup mic, so we're going to check.
Okay,
Thank you. This is really, really wonderful talk.
thank you.
Thinking about kind of following up on what you were saying towards the end about adapting the level of detail in the model descriptions to the needs, and thinking about the problem that the map is not the territory. You don't want the documentation to be coextensive with the model. How do you think about what should not go into the model description? What should be left out to make sure that it's not just becoming an endless task?
Well, you have to realize that this ODD, for example, is just the first step. It's just technically the model in principle. That was the motivation. And then, for example, we have discussed the question, should we add to ODD the description of the simulation model? So how we actually use, what are the settings of the model? And we decided not to make it too complex, but that will be the next step. So ODD is just a little part of the things we would like to document. But so to say, without a model description, we can't do anything. I'm not sure whether this answers your questions. So the technical model description should be complete so that independent of the implementation, you have the chance to actually re-implement the model, get the same results. And we all know that verbal descriptions, they have a minimum rest final ambiguity. So therefore, in the latest version of ODD, we really recommend whatever you write to have a clear link to the code. Yeah, so that you really can see, well, this is really, how did they actually do it? Ah, that's how they did do it. Because at the level of 4, 5, 10 lines of code, we usually can understand it independent of the programming language. Okay.
Thank you.